The rain in Lagos falls like bullets when you have nowhere to hide. It pounds the corrugated iron roofs of Ajegunle's slums with the fury of 1,000 drums, and when you're sitting on cold concrete with nothing but torn clothes between you and the storm, every drop feels like punishment from heaven itself. 9-year-old Emma knew this better than most children ever should. She had been sitting outside Adebayo's premium market in Victoria Island for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. She knew because of the big clock on the building across the street. Emma had taught herself to read time, not for school lessons, but for survival. Time meant everything: minutes between meals, hours between hope, days between medicine for her mother, Judith, who lay sick and waiting at home. Her small body shivered like a leaf in the wind. Water dripped steadily from her tangled hair onto the cardboard sign in her lap. She had made the sign herself the night before, with a broken red crayon she'd scavenged outside a private school in Lekki. The letters bled now, the rain smearing them into streaks of pink. Please help. Hungry. The sign looked like it was crying with her. Emma's fingers clenched around it, knuckles pale against the cold. For 3 months and 4 days, she had taken this same spot. She had memorized the routines of the wealthy shoppers who passed like exotic birds, bright clothes, shiny shoes, voices dripping with entitlement. The man in the blue suit always came at 8:15 for imported coffee. The woman with gold jewelry arrived every Tuesday and Thursday for organic vegetables. The family with 3 children shopped on Saturdays, their baskets overflowing with enough food to feed Emma and her mother for a month. Most of them pretended not to see her. They hurried past with umbrellas and designer bags, their eyes fixed ahead as though looking at her might burn them. A few would toss coins without a glance, dropping them carelessly into her metal plate the way rich people throw rice at weddings. But today felt different. The rain was angrier, the people colder, and the hunger gnawing in Emma's stomach was sharper than it had ever been. She had eaten nothing but half a slice of moldy bread in 2 days, scavenged from a Surulere restaurant bin. Inside the gleaming store, with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, Mr. Williams watched her through the floor-to-ceiling glass. He stood like a hawk eyeing a mouse, his agbada stitched by Kano's finest tailors dry and perfect while his anger simmered hotter by the second. Every time a customer's face flickered with discomfort at the sight of that child, every time pity threatened to pierce the luxury bubble he had built, Mr. Williams's blood pressure climbed. This small girl was destroying his empire, his reputation, the image of Adebayo's premium market as the crown jewel of Lagos's elite shopping. The complaints had already begun. "Sir, that child outside is making my children ask uncomfortable questions," Mrs. Ajegunle had told him just yesterday as she paid for her monthly basket of imported wines and French cheeses. Perhaps she should find somewhere else to sit. The threat had been subtle, but clear. Mrs. Ajegunle spent over 2 million naira every month in his store. She was the type of customer he had built his empire to attract. Losing her meant losing others like her. And Mr. Williams never lost. Mr. Williams hadn't become one of Lagos's youngest billionaires by being soft or sentimental. His rise from the dusty streets of Mushin, where he once pushed a wooden cart of tomatoes and peppers, to owning the most exclusive grocery chain in West Africa, was paved with ruthless choices and harder sacrifices. He remembered hunger. He remembered torn shirts worn for weeks, the humiliation of poverty. But those memories didn't soften him. They hardened him. If he had clawed his way out of poverty through sheer determination, why couldn't everyone else? Why should he pity a child who sat outside his empire, staining his brand with her misery? The rain lashed Victoria Island, and through the glass, he watched Emma huddled by his entrance like a curse on perfection. His security had asked several times if they should chase her away. He had said no, not because of mercy, but because dragging off a child could trigger the kind of public scandal he couldn't afford. But this morning tested him past his limits. 3 customers had turned away already. One had even taken photos, no doubt for social media. If those pictures went viral, years of carefully built prestige could crumble overnight. Mr. Williams clenched his jaw. He had poured millions into making Adebayo's premium market a sanctuary for Lagos's elite marble floors, chandeliers, imported products curated to feed the city's richest. It was supposed to be an escape from the chaos outside, not a stage for it. He seized his grandfather's carved walking stick from behind his desk. Irony burned in his chest. His grandfather had been a poor farmer from Ogun State, the very type of man, Mr. Williams now despised for intruding on his world. The marble floor trembled under his Italian leather shoes as he marched toward the entrance. His employees watched with wide eyes. Their billionaire boss was about to handle what they thought was a minor nuisance personally. The automatic doors hissed open. Lagos rain slammed against him, drenching his Agbada custom-stitched, worth more than a civil servant's yearly salary. Within seconds, the fine fabric clung to him, but his fury was hotter than the storm. Emma's head lifted at his approach. For one fragile moment, her face lit with hope. Maybe this rich man would be different. Maybe he would see the sign in her lap and understand she wasn't asking for luxuries just enough for her mother Judith to survive. "Please, sir," she whispered over the roar of the rain. "I only need small money for my mamas." "Shut up!" Mr. Williams's voice thundered across the street. Several passers-by froze, stunned by the violence in his tone. "Get away from my store, you filthy, useless child. Go back to your worthless parents who cannot feed you. You are ruining my business with your disgusting begging." Emma stumbled back on her hands, terror in her eyes. Her dented plate flipped, coins scattering into puddles and vanishing as quickly as her hope. "Please, sir," she cried again, her words cracking like glass. "My mama is very sick. If I don't get money for medicine, she will die." But Mr. Williams's heart was stone. He raised his heavy stick and slammed it onto the ground near her feet. The crack echoed like gunfire. Emma flinched, sobbing, her small body trembling like a cornered animal. "I don't want to see you here again," he bellowed, his face twisted with rage. "Find somewhere else to beg, or I will call the police. You are a disease on my success, a curse on my name." Emma scrambled up, her bare feet slapping against the flooded street as she ran, tears mixing with rain. Behind her, she left her ruined cardboard sign, the words, "Please help," hungry, bleeding away into the storm. And Mr. Williams, drenched and furious, stood in his empire doorway convinced he had erased the problem. But Emma would return. Mr. Williams slept the sleep of the righteous that night, certain he had solved his beggar problem once and for all. In his Ikoyi mansion, cooled by humming air conditioners, surrounded by Italian imported furniture and paintings worth more than most Lagos homes, he drifted off, dreaming of loyal customers and rising profits. But when his driver pulled up to Adebayo's premium market at exactly 7:30 the next morning, the sight that greeted him nearly sent his blood pressure through the roof. Emma was back, sitting in the same exact spot he had chased her from. Her small body hunched against the rain, clutching a new cardboard sign scribbled in shaky blue pen. "Please help. Mama needs medicine." Beside her, the same battered metal plate, now scrubbed clean with a scrap of her torn dress, sat waiting empty. "Are you completely mad?" Mr. Williams thundered as he stormed across the pavement, his Italian shoes splashing through puddles. "Did I not tell you yesterday never to come back here? Are you deaf or insane?" Emma flinched but didn't run. Her voice cracked, soft but fierce with desperation. "Sir, please. My mama is very sick. I have nowhere else to go. If I don't get money today, she will die." For a fleeting moment, Williams hesitated. Lagos had 15 million people and more beggars than he could count. Most drifted to Ojuelegba or Oshodi. Some haunted Alaba, others Computer Village. Many clung to churches and mosques where sympathetic worshippers might toss coins. Why then did this one child keep haunting his store in Victoria Island, where the rich came not to give, but to spend? The thought lingered for only a second, before rage burned it away. This girl wasn't just begging, she was defying him, mocking his authority, making him look weak in front of his staff and his wealthy patrons. Already, customers were shifting uncomfortably as they passed. One of his biggest spenders, Mrs. Kehinde, who dropped over $2 million a month on imported baby formula and organic goods, actually crossed the street to avoid walking past the girl. That was it. Williams yanked out his gold-plated iPhone, his voice sharp and final. Police station? This is Mr. Williams, owner of Adebayo's Premium Market. I need officers here immediately. There is a beggar child disturbing my business and refusing to leave my property. As he hung up, his reflection in the glass doors stared back at him, a billionaire, furious at a child, too stubborn to disappear. Officers Bello and Adamu had patrolled the streets of Lagos for a combined 37 years. Between them, they had seen armed robbers brought down in bloody crossfire, petty thieves beaten by angry mobs, husbands dragged from homes after nights of violence, protesters flooding bridges with chants, even children running errands for drug dealers in Oshodi. But this call felt different. A billionaire businessman summoning police to remove a 9-year-old beggar girl? Even in Lagos, a city where the distance between Ikoyi mansions and Ajegunle shacks was wider than the Atlantic, it struck both men as deeply wrong. When they arrived at Adebayo's Premium Market, they found Emma still in her spot. Rain plastered her hair to her small face as she clutched her metal plate like it was treasure. Her thin body shook, but her eyes dark, defiant, desperate, never left the ground. The sight pierced them. Both men had daughters. And though Lagos had hardened them in many ways, this broke through the uniform and the training. Officer Bello, older and heavier, lowered himself until his knees creaked, bringing his face level with hers. His voice softened, though he still carried the authority of the badge. "Little one, you cannot stay here. The Oga inside has made a complaint. You need to go home now." Emma's tears spilled faster, rain and salt mixing down her cheeks. Her voice cracked as she pleaded. "I cannot leave, sir. Please, I cannot leave. My mama, her name is Judith, she needs medicine. If I don't get money today, she will die." The two officers exchanged a glance, one of those wordless looks that said more than a paragraph. This wasn't an act. They had seen children lie for handlers, beggars coached by unseen masters, sob stories rehearsed. But this girl's voice trembled with something raw, unteachable. "Where are your parents?" Officer Adamu asked, his tone unexpectedly gentle. "Why are they not caring for you?" "My mama is at home," Emma whispered, scrubbing her face with the back of her hand. "She cannot walk. Her legs don't work. Her mind is broken. I am the only one who can help her. I am all she has." The truth of it hit like a hammer. Bello's jaw tightened. Adamu looked away. Still, duty was duty. Behind them, Mr. Williams stood in his dry agbada under the store's awning, arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. His message was clear. He expected action. The billionaire's complaint was on record now. They could not ignore it. "You will have to come with us," Bello said at last, the reluctance heavy in his voice. "We cannot leave you here." Emma's scream tore through Victoria Island like something ripped straight from a mother's funeral. She wailed, her voice too big for her small body, her hands clawing toward the glass door front as if it were salvation itself. "Please, sir," she cried, stretching toward Mr. Williams. "Don't chase me away. Please, my mama will die. I will die too if I cannot help her. Please, I am not hurting anybody." But her cries meant nothing. The officers, faces grim, lifted her off the wet ground. Her plate fell with a metallic clang, coins scattering and vanishing in the puddles. Emma kicked, thrashed, screamed, until her throat went raw. Her outstretched hands reached toward the store, toward the man who had signed her sentence with a single phone call. And as Bello and Adamu carried her down the street, her sobs echoed against the marble walls and tinted windows of Victoria Island, growing fainter with each step until only the rain remained. The drive from Victoria Island to Ajegunle felt like traveling between two different universes. One moment the police car rolled past glass towers, gated estates, and neon billboards. 30 minutes later, the road narrowed into broken, waterlogged paths where potholes yawned wide enough to trap small cars. Open sewers snaked along the streets, carrying the waste of millions toward the lagoon. Concrete buildings leaned drunkenly against each other, stained by years of rain and neglect. Children ran barefoot through the mud, their laughter rising above the stench of garbage and smoke. Officers Bello and Adamu exchanged silent looks. They had answered enough calls to expect the worst. Addicts using children as bait. Drunk parents. Adults living off coins earned by little hands. They braced themselves for yet another sad, ugly case file. But what they found stopped them cold. Emma guided them up 3 flights of crumbling stairs, each step cracked and uneven. At the end of a dark corridor, she pushed open a door into a single room no bigger than a parking space. Rain leaked through 7 different holes in the ceiling. Buckets and broken bowls sat beneath them, catching steady drips. The walls were cracked and swollen, with holes large enough for rats to slip through. And in the middle of that ruined room sat Judith. She was only 34, but suffering had carved decades into her face. Her thin frame rested in a wheelchair so old it looked salvaged from a hospital dump. Rust chewed its frame. The fabric was patched with scraps of mismatched cloth, and one wheel sagged flat, tilting the chair like a sinking boat. "Mama," Emma cried, running across the room. She threw her arms around her mother's neck, clinging with the desperation of a child who feared every hug could be the last. Judith's eyes, fogged by memory loss, lit only by love, brightened. "Emma," she whispered. Her voice cracked but warm. The officers' hearts clenched. They had seen thieves shot in alleys, women beaten bloody, children abandoned at motor parks. But this was different. Judith's mind was fractured. She could remember her daughter's name, her face, her voice, but little else. She didn't know her last name. She didn't know what year it was. She couldn't explain why her legs didn't work, or why her memory had collapsed into pieces. Her whole world had shrunk to the size of that damp room and the little girl who kept her alive. "She had an accident when she carried me," Emma explained in a voice too steady for a 9-year-old. "She fall and hit her head. Doctors said her brain spoil, her legs break. She cannot walk again, and she forget everything." Emma spoke plainly, as though describing the weather. This was her normal. She told them of her routine, waking before sunrise, walking from Ajegunle to Victoria Island, sitting on the sidewalk with her plate and cardboard sign, returning at night with whatever coins she'd gathered. Some days she came back with enough for rice or gari, some days nothing. Now Judith's health was slipping fast. The cough, the blood, the seizures that left her unconscious for hours. A clinic in Mushin had given Emma the price: 5,000 a bottle for the medicine. 3 bottles to start. 15,000. For the rich, it was pocket change. For Emma, it was a mountain she could never climb. The officers stood frozen, their uniforms heavy with shame. This child wasn't being exploited. She wasn't lazy. She was simply fighting for her mother's life in the only way Lagos had left her. Bello rubbed his face, suddenly tired. Adamu looked away, his throat tight. Both men wanted to help. But training and years on the job had built a wall inside them. They had learned to survive by hardening their hearts, by telling themselves not every story could be saved. They left Judith and Emma in that leaking room, offering little more than hushed advice. Try the welfare office. Advice they knew was as empty as the buckets catching rain on the floor. As the officers walked back down the cracked staircase, Emma's voice carried after them. She was humming softly to her mother, a lullaby too old for her age, her small arms still wrapped tightly around Judith's shoulders. And for the first time in years, Bello wished he could throw away the uniform, forget the rules, and simply hand the child what she needed most: a chance. With Chief Adebayo's store now forbidden ground, Emma had no choice but to find a new battlefield for her mission to save Judith's life. For 2 days she walked the city, her bare feet blistered and sore, studying the movement of Lagos like a strategist, where cars slowed, where people's eyes lingered, where pity might live long enough to open a wallet. She finally chose the corner of Awolowo Road and Adebayo Adeleye Street in Ikoyi. right by the bridge that carried wealth from the island to the mainland. There, traffic often snarled into endless lines of honking cars, and Emma, with her mother's broken wheelchair, could slip between vehicles holding her sign and her hope. What she didn't know was that this road was part of Mr. Williams' daily commute. Every evening, at exactly 6:30, his black Mercedes-Benz S-Class cruised through that intersection on its way to his marble mansion in Ikoyi. On her third day there, fate decided to play its cruel trick. The traffic jam stretched for blocks, drivers impatient, horns blaring. Emma pushed Judith's wheelchair between cars, her small body taut with determination, guiding it around potholes and puddles. The wheels squeaked, threatening to collapse under the weight of her burden, but Emma pressed forward, sweat mixing with rain on her young face. Inside his Mercedes, cocooned in leather seats and classical music, Mr. Williams scrolled through emails on his gold iPhone. He was lost in profit charts and expansion plans when something made him look up. And there, just 2 cars ahead, he saw her. Emma. Her thin arms straining against the wheelchair handles, her head bent with focus, her small frame moving like someone who had learned too early that the world gave nothing freely. Mr. Williams' eyes flicked to the woman in the chair. From behind, he caught only fragments: the way her shoulders sloped, the delicate curve of her neck, the tilt of her head. Something about that posture cracked open an old memory he thought he had buried. For a second, it felt like standing on the edge of a dream déjà vu, mixed with a hollow ache. He leaned forward instinctively, but pride froze him. What were the chances that this ragged woman in a rusted wheelchair could be tied to his world? His circle was politicians, tycoons, foreign investors, not beggars on street corners. The traffic began to crawl again. His driver pressed the accelerator, and the Mercedes slid forward, leaving Emma and Judith swallowed in dust and exhaust. That night, in his marble-floored mansion with chandeliers glittering like constellations, Mr. Williams found no peace. Over imported salmon and French wine, through his evening shower under gold-plated fixtures, even as he lay in his Egyptian cotton sheets, her face haunted him. Not Judith's face. He hadn't even seen it. Emma's, her eyes, her persistence, her refusal to bow. What kind of child carried such weight without breaking? What kind of world demanded it? And why, when he thought of her, did he feel something dangerously close to shame? He turned in his bed, trying to bury the thoughts. He was a businessman, and businessmen survived by shutting out sentiment. Money was his anchor. Power was his language. Compassion had no place in his empire. And yet, as he drifted toward uneasy sleep, he saw it again. Emma's trembling hands on the wheelchair, pushing through rain and chaos, as if she carried not just her mother, but the whole world on her back. Night swallowed Ajegunle as Emma pushed her mother's wheelchair through the narrow streets. They were almost home when Judith slumped forward, her breath turning shallow and fast. "Mama, what is wrong?" Emma ran around to face her. Judith's eyes rolled white. Her body shook with hard tremors. A thin line of saliva slid down her chin. Emma had seen seizures before. This one felt worse. It did not stop. Panic clawed at Emma's chest. She shook her mother's shoulders, first gently, then harder when Judith did not respond. "Mama, please wake up. Please do not leave me." Midnight in Ajegunle is no place for a 9-year-old and an unconscious mother. Gangs own the corners, doors stay locked, help is rare. Emma pushed anyway. She aimed for General Hospital, Lagos Island. It was the only hospital she knew by name. The wheelchair's bad tire dragged to one side. Every step felt like a fight. She pushed through puddles and broken concrete. She pushed across roads where headlights cut the dark like knives. Drivers blasted their horns. Some cursed. No one stopped. The walk should have taken 20 minutes. It took more than an hour. When Emma reached the gate, her dress clung to her skin. Her hands bled where the metal handles had cut into her palms. The nurse at the desk did not look up for long. 3 words ended the plea. "No money, no treatment." Emma begged. She offered to sweep floors. She offered to wash toilets. She said her mother was dying. The nurse kept his face flat. "Bring 50,000 naira for admission. Then we can talk." Judith stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. "Emma," she whispered, and fell back into a weak silence. The lights in the lobby were bright and cold. They lit the girl and the woman like a stage. No one came to help. No one said a word. Emma turned the wheelchair around. She pushed her mother back into the night. The return was slower, heavier. The city felt larger than before. When they reached their building, a paper on the door ended the day. The landlord had changed the locks. The notice said evicted for 3 months of unpaid rent, 45,000 naira. Emma laid newspapers on the concrete walkway. She moved Judith down gently and covered her with her own thin wrapper. The air was cold. The ground stole heat from her bones. Judith's chest rose and fell with effort. Small sounds left her lips. Each one cut Emma open. "I will find a way, Mama," she whispered. "I promise." Emma stayed awake as long as she could. She held Judith's hand and listened to each breath. At last, sleep took her. She curled around her mother like a shield. Somewhere across the street, a figure watched from the shadows. The figure had followed them home. The figure did not leave. By morning, Emma's fight would change direction, and nothing in her small world would ever be the same. Death doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it slips in quietly while the city sleeps. Emma woke to the sound of church bells in the distance, announcing Sunday morning. For a brief second, she forgot the night before and almost believed she was safe. But then the cold concrete pressing against her bones reminded her where she was and why. She turned to check on her mother. Judith hadn't moved all night. She lay in the same position Emma had left her, her face turned to the side, her chest still. "Mama?" Emma whispered, brushing her shoulder gently. "It's morning. We need to go find medicine." But Judith's body was cold beneath her touch. Her lips were pale, her chest unmoving. Emma's stomach dropped. "No, no, Mama, please." Her voice cracked as she shook harder. "I'll get the money, I promise. I'll beg more today. I'll be stronger. Please, don't leave me." But Judith did not stir. Emma's scream ripped through the narrow street. She clung to her mother's lifeless body, crying until her throat burned. Every humiliation, every coin begged for, every long walk through rain and hunger, all of it had been for nothing. Neighbors emerged, some on their way to church. They gathered, whispering and shaking their heads. A few clucked their tongues. A few even lifted phones to capture the sight. But no one bent to help the 9-year-old girl who had just lost the only person she had in the world. Emma's grief burned into rage. The landlord who had locked them out, the hospital that had refused them, the billionaire who had chased her away from his store. They had killed Judith as surely as if they had struck her down themselves. She pressed her forehead against Judith's cold one, then pulled back, fire in her eyes. "I'll make him answer," she whispered. She would go back to Mr. Williams' store, not to beg, not to plead, but to confront the man who had buried her mother with his cruelty. What Emma didn't see was the figure across the street, half hidden by shadows, the same man who had watched them the night before. He had stood there through the dawn, waiting. Now, as Emma cried over her mother's body, he pulled out a small phone, dialed a number, and spoke softly. "She's dead," he said. "The girl is alone now." Then he slipped back into the maze of Ajegunle, leaving Emma unaware that her life was being reported to someone she had never met. Monday morning began with triumph. Mr. Williams strolled into his Victoria Island store, silk agbada pressed to perfection, sales reports in hand, record profits, Abuja expansion on track. And the beggar girl finally gone. His empire was untouchable. Or so he thought. From the corner of his eye, he saw her. Emma, small, soaked, and walking with a fire he had never seen before. Not the pleading weakness of a beggar, something sharper. A grief that had hardened into rage. Mr. Williams stormed outside, his voice booming over the chatter of customers. "Are you insane? How many times must I warn you? Stay away from my business. Do you want to destroy everything I've built? He grabbed her thin arm to drag her off the pavement, then froze. Around her neck, glinting against her damp skin, was a golden pendant, unique, familiar, a piece of his past he had buried beneath wealth and pride. The design caught the morning sun in the same way it had 9 years ago, when he had chosen it in a jeweler's shop in Kano. He had watched every step of its making, had it engraved with care, and placed it around one woman's neck with a promise he had been too proud to keep. Judith, the woman he had once loved enough to imagine a future with. The woman who had vanished, leaving behind silence, unanswered questions, and a wound that had never closed. His voice cracked, barely audible over the traffic. Where did you get this? Emma clutched the pendant. Through fresh tears, her voice was steady. My mama gave it to me before she died. She said it was from my papa, but he never came for us because he didn't love us. The world tilted under Mr. Williams' feet. Judith, pregnant when she disappeared. This child 9 years old. The math punched through his chest like a blade. He staggered, breathless. The lies he had been told all those years ago that Judith had betrayed him, that she had vanished by choice, crumbled in an instant. Take me to your mother, he said, his voice trembling with urgency. Emma didn't hesitate. She turned and began walking, small feet splashing through puddles, pushing the broken wheelchair that carried nothing but her grief. Mr. Williams followed in his black Mercedes-Benz, the air-conditioned silence of his car mocking the heat and chaos of the slums Emma led him into. His pride would not allow her inside, but something stronger than pride, something dangerously close to guilt, kept him on her trail. The journey dragged him across the real Lagos, from the gated quiet of Ikoyi, through markets bursting with noise and hunger, to the cracked concrete of Ajegunle, where every building leaned with fatigue. And with each turn, each street, each sight of Emma's small back pressed against the weight of her world, Mr. Williams felt his convictions cracking. All his life he had told himself poverty was a choice, that those who suffered simply hadn't worked hard enough, hadn't fought ruthlessly enough, that he had risen from Mushin by sheer will so anyone could do the same. But here was a child who had more will than 10 grown men. A child carrying burdens that would crush most adults. A child who, if her words were true, was carrying his blood in her veins. And as his car rolled deeper into Ajegunle, he noticed something that made his stomach twist. A man leaned against a rusted fence, pretending to smoke, his eyes locked not on him but on Emma. Mr. Williams' chest tightened. Whoever that man was, he wasn't random. For the first time in years, the ruthless billionaire felt something colder than anger, fear. When Mr. Williams finally saw Judith's lifeless body outside the locked room that had once been their home, his knees nearly gave way. This was her, his Judith. The woman whose laughter had once been music to him, whose pendant he had chosen with his own hands. But the years had not been kind. Poverty and illness had carved lines where youth had once lived. Her thin body spoke of hunger, her gray hair, of grief. And the broken wheelchair beside her told of injuries he had never even known she carried. His first instinct was to hide behind coldness, to protect himself from the storm rising inside him. She deserved this, he muttered, his voice hollow. She left me. She abandoned me when I needed her most. Emma's scream cut through him like a blade. You lie! Her small fists clenched, her tear-streaked face burning with rage. My mama never left you. She loved you until her last breath. It was your father who hated her because she was poor, because she had nothing to offer. The truth spilled out like fire from her chest. Judith hadn't vanished by choice. She had been taken. On the night she was meant to meet him, Elder Williams' men had dragged her to a warehouse in Ikeja. There they had offered her 10 million naira to disappear forever. She refused, Emma cried. She told them she would never stop loving you. She begged them to let her go back to you. And they beat her for it. Every word struck like a hammer. Judith's ribs broken, her body battered but her heart unyielding. Then the final blow, Elder Williams himself, running her down with his Mercedes when she tried to escape. The crash that crushed her legs, damaged her brain, and turned her into the fragile woman who had raised Emma from a wheelchair. "She wanted to come back to you every day," Emma sobbed. "But she thought you would hate her for what she became. She thought you would be ashamed." Mr. Williams staggered back, choking on the weight of it. For 9 years he had believed his father's lies that Judith had betrayed him, that she had chosen another life. In truth, she had been silenced, crippled, and hidden while carrying his child. "She never stopped loving you," Emma whispered. "Not for one single day." Something inside him shattered. The man who had built walls of pride and cruelty to survive fell to his knees beside Judith's body and wept like a child. He wept for her suffering, for Emma's stolen childhood, for every harsh word he had spat at his own daughter without knowing she was his blood. He wept for the man he had become and the man he should have been. From the shadows nearby, the watcher stepped forward, the same man who had haunted Emma's nights. His face was expressionless as he reported the final truth. Elder Williams ordered it all. He made sure she never returned. The last piece fell into place. His father had orchestrated everything. Mr. Williams carried Judith's body with his own hands, refusing to let anyone else touch her. He gave her a funeral Lagos would never forget. Flowers from Holland, a casket carved from the finest wood, a burial that honored the woman his father had tried to erase. Emma moved into his Ikoyi mansion that same day. She slept on silk sheets and ate full meals for the first time in her life, but she never let wealth erase her past. On her bedside table, she kept her mother's rusted begging plate. In her room, she placed the battered wheelchair, not as a curse, but as a monument to strength. And Mr. Williams, no longer the ruthless man who once drove Emma away, became something else. A father who finally understood that true wealth was not money, but love. His final act was justice. He dragged his father, Elder Williams, to Kirikiri prison with his own hands. The old man confessed under his son's fury, admitting he had destroyed Judith to protect the family's name. But the name was ruined forever, stained with her blood. Emma's story spread through Lagos like a legend. A girl who had begged in the rain, who had lost everything, who had carried her mother's broken body and her father's blind cruelty, yet still found a way to change both their lives. The rain still fell in Lagos, but Emma no longer heard it as punishment. To her, it was a memory of a mother who gave everything, and of a love that refused to die, even in the cruelest of storms. And so, dear viewers, we have come to the end of the story. Emma's journey reminds us that everyone we pass carries a struggle we may never see. Real wealth isn't in cars, houses, or bank accounts. It's in compassion, in love, and in the kindness we choose to show when the world looks away. If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. And to those already subscribed, thank you, truly. Your support means the world. If you felt something while listening, like the story, and drop a comment below. It helps more people discover Emma's story, and it tells the algorithm this is worth sharing. Because sometimes, the story of one small girl can remind us all what it really means to be human.